Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on another video on my channel. This video is going to be a tutorial about slope blending and height blending on our landscape, in which you can set which materials you want to display on slope and which materials you want to set on the landscape depending on height of, in your world. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who is showing their support up to now. On the channel and on Discord. If you're not in the Discord, the link will be in the description, and if you are watching this video and not subscribed, then please subscribe. It will help me a lot. For the guys and girls who are joining me from previous videos on the channel, you'll notice that the landscape is different. There's a very good reason for that, and that is basically because I corrupted the project we was working on in the previous videos by simply trying to migrate from a project that's in an older engine, Unreal Engine 4 version 4.23 I think it was. It was an epic project. I just wanted textures and masks from that project, and I tried to migrate them to the previous project, but I migrated the whole projects instead and corrupted the one we was previously working on. So I've spent this week redesigning this landscape, creating the master material again, and creating all the layers for that master material, hence why I've not released a video in a while. But with that in mind, my videos are going to go to once a week to reduce the load at which my channel is getting. So yeah, I'm glad I got that out of the way, so let's get on with the tutorial. So it's based off slope and height, and we're just going to create some logic which can help us do that. Before we do, look at them God rays. God rays are nice. Let's change this sun. I'm just pressing right Alt and L and holding Alt down. You could change the direction of your sun. For some reason it won't let me go lower than that, but never mind. We're getting sidetracked. I'm going to hit F11 on the keyboard, and now we're out of full screen mode. What I'm going to do to help with speed in the engine, I'm going to turn off some elements here. One being the height fog, which now gets rid of the God rays, and the clouds. This will drastically speed up the engine on my machine. It's not that bad. But anyway, so I've got my landscape now highlighted and got the slot ready for there. What we're going to do first is create a material. I'm going to call this landscape tut, like so. We're going to right click on the material and create an instance, and then drag it into our landscape material slot, and now it has turned black, which is normal. If you're unsure about anything I'm doing in this tutorial, then I'd recommend going back watching the previous series, as this video is actually a new series because of the whole project corruption thing. But this series is going to start for novice to intermediate users in Unreal Engine. So if you're more of a beginner, I'd recommend going watching my previous series. So with that being said, let's carry on. We're going to open our master material, and we need to give this some functionality so it can communicate with our landscape. So off here we're going to type landscape, not candscape, landscape. And we want the landscape layer blend. I'm going to give it one array. Call this auto. We're going to leave it as weight blend. There is difference between these, but it's out the scope of this tutorial. I will do a tutorial just dedicated to these later on in the series or in the next series. We want the preview weight set to 1. This layer blend is basically a communication tool from this material onto our landscape, and because we've got no functionality in here, and we've not created our layer info which connects the material to the landscape. That's why it's displaying just black. So let's give it some functionality. This layer blend, we can add more elements to this, and basically with that you can simply add more functionality to the material, like enabling paint layers, which I also cover in my beginner series. So let's carry on. What we are going to need here is make material attributes. This turns any vector 3, vector 4 information into a material attribute information, which then is received by the layer blend. We're gonna, because this is about slopes and height, we're gonna use 3 of them. And to get another one, I'm gonna hold left control and D. You can also come up here to the palette. I rarely use this personally, but you can also type make. The difference is, I like to type it and then press enter. And in the palette you can't, you have to click and hold and drag in. So my workflow is right click and blah blah blah, and then I just press enter and it works well. For ease of use and speed, I'm just going to use colours today in this tutorial. I'm not going to use actual material layers, which I've set up because it'll just slow everything down. Well, it won't slow everything down, but it'll slow the use of what I'm doing down, because I'll just end up fiddling with tiling and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to use vector 3s. So if you hold 3 on the keyboard and click, it'll bring up a vector 3. And we're going to want 3 of these. So I'll duplicate them with left control and D. In Unreal Engine 4, it used to be left control and W. But Epic have now got a bit of common sense and decided to use control and D, which is better. For the top one, we're going to imitate snow, so we're going to want 1 in the red, 1 in the green and 1 in the blue, which will imitate white, which will be our snow. And we are, in this one, we're going to try to get some sort of dirt colour, so I'm wanting a brownish colour. I'll go a bit further down, it's more yellow. There, that'll do. A bit of a darky brown, like so. And then put that in our base colour. And for this, we're going to just want a simple green. I feel like green is a little too bright, so I'm going to reduce the brightness. Okay. So that's our colour set up. So with the slope blend, we're going to want to blend 2 colours together. So for that we could use a material blend if we want, blend material attributes, which is just the node that Epic provide. These are useful in some cases, but for this one we're going to use standard. We're going to type standard in and want a matte layer blend standard. Essentially these two are exactly the same, they do the same thing. You can still change the blend with your pixel and vertex information. You can blend them together or just use A for pixel and B for vertex. This is out the scope of this tutorial, so I'm just going to remove that. But like I say, this is just the same thing. A lot of artists will use this because you can open it and add things in here, like for your vertex and your pixel normals. But that is also out the scope of this tutorial. I just want this to be a simple one to blend off slope and height. So I am going to blend my slope into the base material, and then my ground into the top material. And in the alpha, I'm going to want another function called a slope mask. Enable this slope mask. If I right click this blend and preview, as you can see, I'll use the square, it's more logical. What this slope mask is doing to the material standard, blend standard, whatever, is basically telling the engine to display vertically on the z-axis down onto the landscape, and wherever the landscape is, that green colour, and anything that isn't flat on the landscape will be the brown colour. And that is just the basics of the slope mask in action. It's kind of like Minecraft, that, isn't it? So yeah, that's basically what it does. You'll see it more evident shortly. As a workflow, you don't have to do this. As standard, the slope mask displays in the Z-axis, which is vertical, but we do like to set it in stone to be 100% sure. So we're going to bring in a vector 3, and a vector 3, essentially what this is as well, it enables you as an artist to choose the axes you want to display on. So if I put this in the slope angle and I start previewing this again, like so, you'll see here that there's nothing set now because the vectors are all 0. So if I set the way this is as well, the red, green and blue represent X, Y and Z. So if I want to display the green in the X axis, just give it a 1 there and it will display on the X axis, and if I want to display on the Y axis, I can do so like this, it'll display there, but we want the Z axis, which is the blue channel, and now it's doing what it was doing before and just displaying on the vertical axis, which is Z. So with that out of the way, let's carry on. The tangent normal, what the tangent normal does in the slope mask, that enables, say if I break material attributes, if I spell it right, I'll tell you what, just do that. You can basically drag out of here and use your normal of the slope layer into tangent normals, and it will blend your base material, which would be the green, with the normals based on your slope. So it's a nicer blend, but obviously we're just using colours in this tutorial, so that won't work. But that's what your tangent normal is. It works in coalition with your contrast, which gives you the amount of blend to apply. And we're just going to promote wrong one. We're just going to promote the fall off power and the cheap contrast to parameters by right clicking on the name and then just click promote to parameter. You can also press S on the keyboard and click and it'll get a parameter as well. What these defaults, I do know these off the top of my head. For this I'm going to give it a 5. I'm going to get rid of that. Yes. That's the default fall off power. This changes the amount of slope you want to use, and the contrast is the amount of blend between the slope layer and the base layer. For that I'm just going to give it a simple default of 1. So if I go to my sphere, now you can see it's changed a little bit. You'll see it more on the landscape shortly. And then we'll just drag this into our layer blend, stop previewing that, and we're just going to hit apply. And you can see it's still black. Like I said before, it does need the layer information to communicate with the material. So we're going to open this. As you can see, it's not populated our layers yet, so the simple fix for this is a shift 1, and we'll click on our landscape and you can see our material is in there, so we just eject it from the material slot and simply drag it back in again, like so, and that shift 2, that should populate our layer now. You can see it's here. To create the layer information for this layer, simply click the plus and click on weight blended layer, and just save it wherever you want. And now this should create the communication. So as you can see, like I said before with the Z axis, I'm just going to speed my camera up. What that slope doing, the slope mask is doing, it's basically telling us to display the green straight on the vertical axis like this onto the landscape, and anything on the landscape that isn't flat to make it brown, which is going to imitate our rocks. I know it doesn't look very rocky, but it'll do for this tutorial. And that is the basics of creating a slope blend for your material. So probably a lot of you wondering now, like, well, hang on a minute, grass doesn't grow on the top of mountains right at the peak, and I'm not no mountain dwelling hero, So, and I know grass doesn't grow up here, so that's where the height blend comes in. So we'll do that right now. We'll come out of landscape mode and shift and 1. Come back to our material, and what we want to do now is create a bit of logic in here in which it will communicate with our material, telling it not to portray the green so far up the mountain. So for that we need another blend layer standard. We're just going to fire this into our base material, and we'll come out of here into our top material here. So what we need to do now is create some logic for this blend standard to display our layer at the right height. So we're going to come out of the alpha and use a new function called smooth step. As you can see, they're in different categories. There is a couple of different types. So if I type smooth again and come to the miscellaneous, that's the function, and I type smooth again, come to the utility. As you can see, these two are the same. They're both nodes, and this is a function. Essentially these three are the same, but these are node based, and you can't really, all you could do is change the constant amounts in these. There's not really much you could do practically with them, but essentially, like I say, all three do the same thing. These two are identical. I don't know why I dragged them both out. This one is created using a custom node, I think, yeah, where they've added a bit of code into there, and it creates the same functionality as these, but you can't obviously edit these, but you can add more to the code here in this one. And delete that one. Okay, and get rid of them. And this smooth step is going to allow us to set the height. So what I am going to do is I'm going to right click and promote these to parameter like we did with the other function. Green, if you like. And then I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to change that to max. And I'm going to set that in here. And that's them done. What we do need to do is give the function the know-how of which height to set. So I'm going to try my best to describe that. Where's my mannequin? Let's slow this camera back down. There we go. So if you click on our mannequin, as you can see, we've got our pivot point at the bottom. If we scroll up here, similar to the 3 vector and the component mask, if we go to our 3 vector here, the red, green and blue, like I said earlier, is X, Y and Z. It's similar in the details panel. You have X, Y and Z on the location, and at the minute the pivot point for this mannequin is set at -520. Let's bring that right down, and now it's set at -590. So we need to get the information of our world at that Z axis level, and to do that we need a node called absolute world position. And what this node essentially does is get the actual, it's the information of our world position, which is here, is then taken into account with this node, and we can simply plug that into there. But now Smooth Step doesn't know what axis to display on, so in there we will get a component mask, and like the vector 3, the red, green and blue are the axes, so we get untick the X, untick the Y and tick the Z, and now we have the Z axis of our world position, and we'll put that into Smooth Step. And now Smooth Step has our axes. As you can see here now, it's the same thing. If I use a cube, it'll do it better. And now it's the line is the actual position that this absolute world position is showing. That was a mouthful. So it's similar to the slope mask now, but there we only had to use a vector 3 node because it just needs the world, whereas this needs the absolute position of the world. And that is basically it. I'm going to stop previewing that. And what this is going to do now is, you can see it's removed all the green, all the grass that was growing on the peaks of our mountain, and brought it down to a safer level. Which you can see it doesn't look great, so we're going to open our material instance like so, and you can see we've got our cheap contrast, our fall off, our green max and our green min. So going back to our mannequin, you can see in the details panel that it's at 590, so if I set my green minimum to -600, and that's my minimum now. If I do the maximum, I could drag this all the way down, and this green here now should start fading. There you go. The closer I get to -600, the sharper this blend will become. If I come right close to 600 like so, now that's really sharp, but the higher I go, the better a fade it goes with. This is just, like I say, based off this Z component, this Z axis. So I'm just setting in the world position of that axis, and I can increase that really high and it goes back up to on top of the peaks again, that magical grass. But I'm just going to keep this at 0 to give it some sort of blend. But that's the bottom. And if you say I go to -590, it just completely breaks and doesn't work. Well, let's go a bit lower than that. Yeah, it just completely breaks and doesn't work anymore. So I've set the minimum. I need to keep the maximum above the minimum, and it'll work better then. And that is basically the basics of the height blend as well as a slope blend setup. Now you're probably wondering, well, hang on a minute, they're showing black on the rest of that. The reason that is because our blend standard here has got no input for the top material, so it doesn't know what to display there. So to easily solve that, we'll drag this down, put a node in here, and we'll just tell this blend node to display our slope by simply dragging it into our top material. Click apply, and now that should have all gone, and now it's all slope material, if you like. So yeah, and that's basically the height, where you can set the height of your material and the slope of your material. But also at the top of mountains, every now and again you do get a bit of snow, so let's set a bit of snow up there. Using this functionality that we've got here, let me just make sure I get all this right. We'll simply drag this and duplicate it up here. And what we want to do is add our white into the base material. I'm going to change these names to snow, if you like. Like so. Change that green to snow. Pardon me. And what we need to do now is just to drag out of this material blend into the layer blend. And then from this connection, this standard here, we'll drag that into our top material. We'll click apply and come back here, and you'll see that it's gone all white. That is because we've not got the height set up, the absolute world position. If I get my mannequin and drag it up like so, what I'm doing now is getting the actual world position. This blue here you're seeing is just a plane in the ground. I've coloured it blue to imitate water. But as you can see, my Z position there, 13,440. So obviously can go a bit higher, but I'll set it at that for now. So I'll use as a minimum 13,000. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to enable this, and I'll set this to 13,000 as well for now. And you can see it's not changed. That is because it doesn't know which side to display on just yet. If I do this up a bit, start going up. Actually, that's inverted, but never mind. I'll send the minimum above the maximum. There you go. Just for the state of this tutorial, all you would have to do is simply swap these around. They are in the right slots, that's what I can't get. But never mind, it's not a big deal. So yeah, and that's basically how you can get a snow cap on your mountains. As you can see, if I increase the maximum, which should be the minimum, it creates less of a fade because I'm closer to the minimum numbers. If I reduce that, it swaps. That's the caveat with this. If you say my minimum, which should be my maximum, goes over the minimum, it inverts it. If it goes below the minimum, it inverts it the other way. So you just got to get used to that. Move that down a bit. Let's reduce, and you can see the fade of the snow is getting bigger. So if I reduce this more, bring it down, and bring that up more, it's reducing that fade, and now it's becoming a straight line, like so. Let's just leave it at that for now. So yeah, this is a quick tutorial to show you how to create a slope for your mountains and set the height from which your grass material or rock material or whatever will not travel all the way up the mountains, and you can use the same height functionality to put a snow cap on your mountain. And that is basically the logic here, what you can use. Anything on the side, this side, maybe you've got a full setup material layer, let's drop that down, like we've set in previous videos where we've created actual material layers and give it a full functionality. You could simply do all that logic here and input it into there like normal, and still carry through this, and you'll obviously get better results than just colours splattered onto the landscape. But yeah, I just thought I'd do this tutorial to showcase how to do a slope blend blended with height blend. So yeah, if you found this tutorial informative, if you like, then hit subscribe and look forward to more tutorials from me. So I'll see you later. Goodbye.